higher part of us is this energetic container, right? This larger part of our beingness. And the more time and attention that I place on that part of myself, the more I invite that into my human container, my humanness. And so I am of the opinion that a daily practice of tapping into that establishes and strengthens the line to it, right? It's like a channel. It's like a direct connect to that higher part of ourself.
Welcome to 60 Mindful Minutes. I'm your host, Kristen Manieri. Thanks for being here. I've been thinking a lot about how we can each actively engage in our growth and our evolution, or what some might call the spiritual path. When we embark on a spiritual path, one that aims to have us understand our lives and ourselves and each other more deeply, we may start to see that we have a deeper intelligence that offers a bigger perspective and wisdom for our lives. It's something beyond our rational, logical, and thinking minds. And today, in this conversation ahead, we're going to be defining that as the higher self. Donna Bond, author of Original Wisdom, Harness the Power of the Authentic You, differentiates our human self, the one consumed with navigating just the day-to-day realities of everyday life, from our higher self, which is the truest, wisest, calmest core of who we each are. According to Donna, by integrating the wholeness of our higher selves with our human selves, we're able to transform our consciousness and empower our lives from the inside out. And if you're like, wait, what? Don't worry. We're going to be diving into this integration in the conversation ahead. And Donna and I are also going to be talking about the difference between the human self and the higher self, how to create more opportunities for transformation, being with our own beingness. We talk about energy, frequency, and vibration. And near the end, we talk about the process of seeding. So let me tell you a little bit about Donna Bond. Donna is a spiritual advisor, business and life coach, and the author of Original Wisdom, which is the book we discussed today. She holds a master's degree in spiritual psychology with an emphasis on consciousness, health, and healing. I really loved this conversation, and I've been really looking forward to sharing it with you. So let's jump in. So Donna, welcome. I think a really great place to start would be with the title of your book. It's such an intriguing title, and it made me have just such curiosities. It's Original Wisdom. So why did you name it that, and what does that mean to you?
Thank you for asking, Kristen. That was not always the name of the book. It wasn't the working title. Originally, I was going to call it Love, Apples, and Miracles. And Original Wisdom kept showing up in the subtitle, to be perfectly honest with you. And, it's so archetypal, really. And my whole book is about coming into greater awareness of your soul and living from there. And so my definition, which is in my book of Original Wisdom, is the inherent intelligence in all beings that is rooted in unconditional love. And, it's like a fancy name for your soul. And so I love the feel of it. I love the word wisdom, right? I think one of my other intentions with my offering of that book is to help people move beyond the over-reliance that we have with just our intellect and letting our mind be the only intelligence that we, guide our life through. And we have an emotional intelligence, which has made, quite a shift and a movement over the last 15, 20 years, even in the business community. We have a physical intelligence. Our bodies are carefully designed transmitters that are always giving us information that we overlook. And then, of course, we have spiritual intelligence. And so this idea that we are multidimensional beings and there's more to us than our body and our mind, I think original wisdom sort of supports that in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, I love that, because I can tell you that when you talk about an over-reliance on our intellect, like my hand shoots way up. Yep, me, this girl right here.
Me too.
Yeah, I mean, I love my mind. I love working things out and solving problems and coming up with new ideas. Like I do. I can say I just really love my mind. But I can also say that I think the thing that has really propelled me forward in my own evolution journey is this infinite spiritual wisdom, this spiritual intelligence that just can't explain certain things, or that is just felt and just known, like just deeply known. And I love, like, I know why you had the word apple in your original title. And I know that this metaphor of a seed weaves its way through the entire book. And there was one part where you wrote specifically about that. You said you are an orchard, far more than a single seed. You are a drop of all that is. And I wondered if you could expand on that.
Yeah, thank you. I love hearing you say it. I love your question. I love that you're asking me this and that you fished out that jewel, right? Mm-hmm. I think we underestimate ourselves, and we underestimate ourselves because we are a byproduct of everything that we've been taught, from our parents, our teachers, our governments, our religions, our cultures, our societies. And everybody's doing the best they can in, the upbringing of all of us, right? Like our parents and their parents and their parents. And our mind, our intelligence is limited when we're just dealing with our intellect. And so again, coming back to this idea that we have this wholeness, right? We have these multidimensional layers to who we are as creation. And when I say like a drop of all that is, we have to start with energy. Einstein taught us that energy can't be created or destroyed. It just reinvents itself, right? In different expressions. And so when you get your head around this idea that everything is energy, everything, our thoughts are energy, right? But if you think of the universe at large, and our soul is a more narrowly focused projection of the energy of all that is. And then our individual selves is an even more narrowly focused projection of the energy of our soul. Mm. So, sometimes, most of the time, we walk around in life and we think that like, oh, I'm a body and I have a soul. But I really want to invite people into this greater awareness that your soul is the much larger part of your being, and that your body and your mind are sort of your soul's avatar. Is a good way to think about it, right? Like our body, this earth suit that we're wearing, is a disguise for this expression of energy that I am. And so when you start to, lift your awareness around how big this is where I come back to, you're an orchard. We have so many different possibilities. We have so many different opportunities, right? It's like we just have to open ourselves to them, and they are unlimited.
Yeah, I think it was really well expressed in your book in the way that you differentiated the human self from the higher self. And I think for me, that was a really great way to not use the word soul, because I think you and I could both agree that that word gets used maybe so many times, or maybe even misused, that we're sort of like, well, what do you mean soul? Like you can kind of lose touch with it. But when you defined human self and higher self, that to me created a new place of understanding, like resonance, I can say for me. Can you sort of define those and speak to a little bit about that differentiation? I think that'd be a really great foundation for the rest of our conversation.
Yeah, of course. Well, our human self, as I was explaining earlier, this is the learned part of us. This is the part of us that has been taught. This is the part of us that is conditioned, the part of us that is patterned. But our higher self is the unconditioned part of ourself, the part of us that is connected to all that is, the part of us that is part of the one mind, the one energy. And our human self, like we're down here on the ground. A good analogy is a glass elevator. And our human self is on the ground floor of the glass elevator. You can only see so far ahead of you. You can't really see or perceive any obstacles that might be up ahead or any shortcuts that are available to you. But as you rise up in that glass elevator, suddenly your perspective begins to change with each level that you go up in this elevator, right? Until you get to this higher place where you have an aerial view on your life. And this is how I like to think about my higher self, that it has more information. It has a different level of intelligence that is a wisdom. And our local mind, our human mind, our human mind wants things to make sense. It wants things to be logical. It wants to make sense out of things. It also likes order, and it likes to be right. It likes to know what all the steps are. How long is it going to take? What's it going to cost? What will be the return on the investment? Mm-hmm. These are all rational, logical, left brain, analytical, problem-solving directions that our human self and our human mind take. But our higher mind, our higher self, has an aerial view, has a completely different perspective. So I hope that that's a good analogy that defines the difference a little bit.
Yeah, it really does. And it's interesting because when you were describing some of the sort of functions of the human self and what it likes, I started to think about kind of the antithesis of that. And I was thinking, okay, well, but my higher self really likes beauty and whimsy and kindness for no reason, right?
Yeah.
And I think maybe another way to look at it is or to even just express it is that the higher self is just not tangled up in the human experience. It's managed to free itself. And I love that idea of just because it has that perspective. Like today's meeting, the milk I forgot to pick up, the funny look someone gave me at the gas station, like that's all just down here, just human stuff. And the higher self can just transcend that. And I think I love using that word transcend, because I don't hear you creating a hierarchy. When you say higher, and I don't hear you, one's not good or bad. It's just perspective. You can just see better from up there. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love what you're sharing. And I think that's really, really important. And, sometimes it's easy for people to be enamored with our higher self. And then what we do in our humanness is we begin to make wrong our humanness, our ego mind, our personality. And we don't want to do that. we want our ego and our personality to be in service to our higher self. If our higher self is taking the lead, we need our human self, which is like the boots on the ground, right? Like we're down here in this life navigating physical world reality. And we cannot navigate physical world reality without our ego, without our personality. This is how we have chosen to show up in physical reality and move ourselves through our world. So there's a real importance, just like you're saying, like there's not a hierarchy here. Nobody's better, one's not better than the other. The intention is an overall integration of both parts of ourselves. And this, I believe, is what can walk us into a better understanding of our wholeness, right? Our wholeness is loving all the parts, accepting all the parts, encompassing and integrating all the parts.
Oh, I love that, the integration. I can say when I read the part of your book about perfectionism and being a control freak, I had sort of developed a question that I wanted to ask you about that, but I've changed it as we've been speaking, because what I really want to know is, how do we not become perfectionists about our spiritual journey? Because I have definitely experienced in my life getting really good at my higher self. You can't see my air quotes right now, but they're there. And realizing that, that's actually my human self trying to do this right and to get somewhere and to attain something. And actually, that's not what my higher self is interested in at all. So can you speak even personally, like how have you managed to navigate your perfectionist leanings, your control freak leanings as it relates to your spiritual journey? How have you kept that in check?
Yeah, it's such a big question, Kristen. So I think it's helpful first to understand that our higher self is neutral all the time about everything, right? Our higher self resides in a place of equanimity. And so our higher self does not view the world in the same way that our human self does, where it gets caught up in right or wrong or good or bad, right? So it's only our human self, our personality and our ego that walk around with this big measuring stick called judgment, where the ego is constantly measuring everything, right? And we get tangled up. And this is really the world that we live in physical reality, because we are in the land of polarity. We're basing our experience and judging our experience based on what we perceive to be good, bad, right, wrong, up, down, black, white, right? You name it. We are in the land of polarity. But our higher self sees everything as neutral, right? It's not good or bad. It just is. It just is what it is. And our soul is moving us through a learning journey, which is really the basis for spiritual psychology, which was pioneered and created by Doctors Ron and Mary Holnick at the University of Santa Monica, which is where I received my master's. The soul sees everything as neutral. So when we're running a story of perfectionism, what's really happening in our ego and our personality is that we see everything as not enough. We see everything as not good enough, which is why we're trying to be perfect, even though there is no perfect. But when we can move into that place of the middle, that middle point in between the good and the bad, then we can drop the judgment that we're bringing to it. And that essentially drops our suffering. Mm-hmm. So back to your original question, like, how does this play out while you're on the spiritual path? And for myself, you do this work long enough and you get to a point where you're like, oh, I should already know all this, or I should have had it figured out by now, or I shouldn't get triggered because I'm so spiritual. Well, that is a judgment, right? That is another right making or wrong making that is being brought about through our ego mind. And so I'm going to tip my hat again to Drs. Ron and Mary Holnick, because they have a spiritual psychology principle that is very helpful with this. And they say, how you relate to the issue is the issue. Mm. How you relate to yourself while you're going through the issue, that is the actual opportunity that's available to you. Mm. So, this comes back to being really kind to yourself. Mm-hmm. And, you talk about the lens of the soul being about beauty and kindness. Well, it's bringing that essence to our humanness.
So good. I love everything that you stand for and everything that you've said. And one of the things that I really appreciated about your book, and I wanted to touch upon with you, is that you have these OFTs, you call them opportunities for transformation. And they're really just exercises in the book where you can actually just roll up your sleeves and do the work. And I wanted to ask you, what is your stand in regards to actively engaging in our own transformation, as opposed to passively waiting for a transformation to happen to us, like this sort of magical moment, an event that we're suddenly transformed, which I know you and I both know that's just not how it works. But talk to me a little bit about that importance of seeing our growth and our work and our evolution as something that we put effort into.
Yeah. Boy, I love this question. I know you get this, being a book nut like me. If you could see my office, there's thousands of books here. And I'm very well read. I have been a spiritual seeker since I was 12. And I can't get enough. I love it. And nothing in my life began to change until I was willing to apply what I was learning intellectually, until I was willing to apply that to the real world. And that's because it's only in the real world, in physical reality, that we can get feedback, that we can allow life to correct us, to redirect us, to teach us. It was the great coach Steve Chandler who drew the distinction between information and transformation. And, you can read a book about playing the piano, for example, or you could read a book about how to play the guitar. But you and I both know, until you put your fingers on the keys or put your fingers on the strings, you can't really master it. You can't really have that experiential, textural quality where you're engaging in a two-way conversation. And that's how I want to phrase this, right? Like, when we begin to do our own inner work, we're getting into a two-way conversation with the universe, with the divine, with God, or however you want to say it, or however you want to see it, right? There is this infinite intelligence that is everywhere present, that is this universal life force energy that is all around us. And we want to engage in a two-way conversation with that energy. And that's how we have to do it. It does, in the physical world, it requires action. It does require action. So for myself, I sort of woke up at the top of my game at the age of 45. And it was not until I enrolled myself in this master's program at the University of Santa Monica that I really began to do the work, to show up, to ask the hard questions, to go inside myself and open up a dialogue with a part of me that was beyond my local mind.
Yeah, you refer to it several times in the book as your beingness. And I love your encouragement to, I'll read from the book, it says, literally create a sacred space you can go to in order to be with yourself and your inner beingness. That's something that I find myself over the last, 3 or 4 years as of being like kind of a foundational underpinning to the work that I do. And that is that if we don't literally create a space to do this work with ourselves, like that two-way conversation that you were just talking about, then it kind of happens by kind of happenstance or kind of haphazardly or in a response to crisis, where we're kind of forced down to the mat to be with whatever it is that we're experiencing. Can you share a little bit more about what it looks like to you if someone says to you, well, what do you mean by creating a sacred space? What is that? What do I do? How do I do that? What does that look like? How do you respond to that?
Oh, I just love this. Yeah, I mean, literally and physically find a place. Find a place that you love. Find a safe, quiet place. This can be outside in your backyard, under a tree, on a blanket. This can be in, a room unto itself where you've got a beautiful, comfortable piece of furniture that you can sit and relax in. The word cozy just came to me for whatever reason. I guess I want to share that with everybody. This is like a sacred place that you take yourself to. And for me personally, I have this beautiful tray that sits on the floor in my bedroom in front of my sliding glass door. And my sliding glass door looks out onto fountains and flowers and, a statue of Francis of Assisi. There's all kinds of butterflies and hummingbirds. I live in Southern California, so I'm blessed with all this beauty outside my window. But on this tray, I've got candles and crystals and essential oils, and I am a student of A Course in Miracles. So I have my Course in Miracles text with me. I have poetry books that I read. I have a journal. I have living visions. I've got all my toys, and I'm using air quotes right now. And this is my sacred space, right? And I physically go there, and by creating an environment in which I know that spirit is going to meet me when I intentionally bring myself into this sacred container of my own making, of my own creation, it's a place where I can go to surrender. I have a box of Kleenex there, right? Because that's where I go to let go, where I go to stop the engagement with the doing part of me, because my friends at school, they call me Donna the doer. I know how to navigate physical world reality, but this is a place where I go to be. There's nothing really there to do, Kristen. It's like there's a place where I can surrender and where I can be met by my higher power.
So you've got an exercise on page 16, at least in the copy of the book that I have. It's on page 16 called Being with that Multidimensionality, Your Beingness. And this is one of your OFTs, Opportunities for Transformation. And I loved this exercise, and I wondered if you would just describe it a little bit and give people a sense of maybe something for us doers that we could do when we're in our sacred space.
Yeah. Well, we underestimate our breath. And I think just sitting in a position of stillness, wherever you can do that, and closing your physical eyes and opening your spiritual eyes, opening your spiritual heart, and the way that you can bring that intentionally in your own mind is to put your attention on your forehead in between your eyebrows, and then also place your attention on your heart space and just breathing, just slowing down your mind and your heart, and just intentionally taking a nice cleansing breath inward. And we can all do this right now. And then just letting go, just dropping anything that no longer serves you, letting go of anything you no longer need in this moment, whether you're consciously aware of that or not. And as you continue breathing, again, just placing your attention on your forehead or on your heart space, and just resting, keeping your focus on your breath. And you'll notice there's a calm underneath all of the noise and the activity. There's a calm that is always there. There's an energy that you can tap into that gives you a feeling of safety and warmth. And the more still you are, the easier it is to recognize this peacefulness that's within you. And to your logical mind right now, I just want you to bring the awareness that that calm is always with you. It's always available to you. And all you have to do to connect to it is to stop, to be still, to connect to your breath. And just take your right hand and place it on your heart right now. And inwardly, just thank yourself for taking these few precious moments to be with yourself.
It's beautiful. I love that. You go on in that section of the book to talk about creating a daily practice. And I wanted to ask you about, in your experience, the importance of habit and ritual and us approaching our spiritual centering, engagement, as something that we have to just keep coming back to, even just like saying it like have to, but like that it's actually really helpful to just create a cadence of coming back to it every single day. I wonder if you'd speak to that a little bit.
Oh, yes. Well, I know this is your area of expertise, right? My meditation practice has quite literally saved my life because I had a prophetic dream about breast cancer that was growing in my chest. And I really, I know that maybe I would have had the dream, but I know I would not have been able to remember or recall the dream had it not been for my daily practice. And I'm really serious about my daily practice. I almost never miss it. Sometimes when I go to bed at night, I'm like, oh, I can't wait to wake up and do my practice in the morning.
Too. Yes, I totally get that.
We are creatures of habit. And I think it's important that we cultivate habits that are informing the way we want to experience our life. And I want to experience my life as being more loving, as being more connected, as being more mindful, as being more aware and receptive to the world around me, to the people around me, to my clients, and to myself. And so cultivating a practice of stillness, of slowness, slowing down. So cultivating a practice of stillness and slowing down is the way in which I like to say, build our central column of light. Now, what does that mean? It's like the higher part of us is this energetic container, right? This larger part of our beingness. And the more time and attention that I place on that part of myself, the more I invite that into my human container, my humanness. And so I am of the opinion that a daily practice of tapping into that establishes and strengthens the line to it, right? It's like a channel. It's like a direct connect to that higher part of ourself. And, Kristen, I think a good way to think about this is it's a relationship, right? It's a relationship like any other relationship. And we can either nurture, pay attention to, and cultivate our relationships, or we can ignore them and disregard them and, not pay attention to them. And I think that we'll all agree, and we all know firsthand that it's the relationships that we nurture and cultivate that grow and evolve and strengthen. So I think that that is a great way to think about, like, really the motivation for a daily practice. And, a daily practice also, it can look a lot of different ways. It can be prayer for some people. It can be meditation for others. It can literally just be silence. It can be listening to yourself breathe. So I think that's another really important element. And another point that I want to convey to everybody is that this is about you and you. And this is about you supporting you and developing this deeper relationship with yourself. So do what feels good to you.
Yeah. Such a good place to start throwing out some words like frequency and vibration, which are definitely words that come up in your book a few times. And when I think about that relationship and that sort of tapping into that higher self and making that date with yourself to go be with your spiritual, to go be with your beingness, to me, it increases the vibration of that relationship. The frequency is probably a better way. Like I can hear it better. I'm tuned in better. It's like I'm tuning the radio. And the more I'm there and the more I open myself up to it, the deeper I let myself go, that the more I can hear it better. But the other side of it is it's how that vibration then is for the rest of the world. And we all know, we've met people that just feel good. It's like an unseen force about them that it feels good to be around them. They kind of vibrate and resonate at a really lovely level. And when we talk about doing this spiritual work, it might seem like, oh, this is all for me. Like, oh, it's about, me getting to the root of myself and me tapping into my beingness and my spiritual work. But really, I think you'll agree with me that this is our best work for the world. Because when I do this and my frequency and my vibration is channeling on a higher level, that perspective level that we were talking about, how I show up for the people in my life, whether they know me or not, is different, and it matters.
100%. Yes. I love that you're bringing this forward. We are energetic beings. Just because we can't see our energetic body doesn't mean we don't have one, right? We have an energetic body, and that energetic body has a frequency. It has a vibration. And so as a result of that frequency or of that vibration, we are transmitting the flavor, if you will, the resonance of that frequency is being sent out into the cosmic soup, right? We've got this giant bowl of energy that we are all part of, and we're all putting something into the collective. We're putting something into the cosmic soup. So if we're walking around and we're always angry and we're caught up in, guilt and shame, then essentially that is the frequency that we are sending out into the cosmic soup, out into the collective. Whereas when we're tapping into that higher frequency, that energy of love, which is the energy of our true nature, and we're more aligned with that energy, then exactly what you're saying, like we want to be around those people. Those are the people that uplift us and make us feel good because they are emanating that frequency. It's literally like coming off of them and going into the cosmic soup. So I love what you're sharing. And I think that this is also an incentive to do the work, right? And it's like, oh, well, when I do my inner work, well, what does that mean? It means I take responsibility for any of the upsets that I'm having in my life, right? Like the world is a crazy place. There's a lot of crazy people doing a lot of crazy things. And if I walk around activated because of the way the world is, then that's sort of how I'm feeding the craziness. I'm participating in that because I'm charged by it. Whereas if I work with myself and say, okay, why am I upset? Like, what is it about me that's so upset about that? Which might be something that's outside of myself. And now we're going into an even bigger, deeper conversation here. But I think taking responsibility for the awareness that if we're upset about anything, that upset is happening inside of us, right? And so that's what we want to begin to look at and to understand and to heal so that we can rest in the place of our true nature more easily, which is that energy of love.
Yeah, it's interesting. You bring up a good point about how this could be such a bigger conversation. We could speak for hours just about this. And what I'm kind of pointing to is this idea of first do no harm, right? Or I think as I've read about it recently is don't add any more garbage. Like don't put more in the soup, as you're saying.
Yeah.
But where I get challenged with that is, okay, I can really see that getting activated by what's going on in the world and then adding more garbage to it. Can you believe it? Can you believe they did that? Did you see what was in the news? Like, I totally align with you that that's not helpful. It's not helpful to me and it's not helpful to the beings that I'm sharing my space with. However, I also don't want to become like spiritually apathetic.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't like how that energy feels over there. I don't like that frequency. So I'm just going to just turn away and go be over here. And then perhaps what that creates is just like a whole bunch of people who aren't doing anything about what's wrong with the world. Mm-hmm. And I wonder, like, how do you tackle that? Like, how do we be citizens of the world who aim to make the world a better place and also not participate in craziness?
Yeah, I love this. I think that we've been brought up, certainly in our country and around the world, with this attitude of againstness, right? Like I'm against that and I'm against this and we are throwing our energy, we're investing our life force in what we're against. Mm. And so what I want to invite everybody into is investing your life force into what you're for, right? War, we want to be for peace, right? So it's a complete shift in how we operate. You know, anti-racism. I don't like to use that word because I don't want the word racism in the center of the conversation. I want the word equality in the center of the conversation, right? Like, so I think moving away from the things that we don't want and that we don't like, but aligning ourselves with the world that we want to live in, the world that we want to see. Is that helpful?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really circles back for me to a part in your book where you write about energy flows where attention goes. And then another part of the book where you talked about intentionally investing your life force. And I wondered if maybe part of our purpose for living, which is another question, another whole topic I wanted to get in with you, which we probably won't have time for. But I'm wondering if that part of the wisdom that we kind of pick up in life is that we matter, first of all, like just knowing that whatever we're doing in the world is mattering. It's changing energy somewhere, definitely. And even just starting there and just noticing that how we show up, what we say, what we don't say, what we do, what we don't do, that absolutely matters. But to take your point of being for something and starting to invest our energy in like, what am I for? Like, what is the change that I would want to see in the world? And then what would I do just with me, just today, in my own tiny little speck of the world? What could I do to contribute to that? Like, that's such a different approach than like, well, I should start a nonprofit or I should go volunteer somewhere. And hey, those are good things too. I wouldn't discount them at all. But it really just starts with me saying, okay, I have this life force. I have this energy. Like, where am I going to invest it? Like in the next 30 seconds. And that might even look like going and sitting down on my meditation cushion for 15 minutes and getting myself centered again. Like that actually might be the best thing I could do for the world.
Love this, Kristen. Yeah. Yes. I love it. You know, our life is right here, right now, in this moment. The most important thing to me in this moment is this conversation that I'm having with you. Right? So I'm investing my energy, my attention, my life force into this exchange, into this communication, into this relationship. And you and I are planting seeds, and maybe the seed grows up really big and strong and one day becomes an entire orchard.
I'm so glad you used that word, because that was actually what need to be my last question, because we're coming up to the end of our time together, is the process of seeding. You know, I loved that concept in your book, and I wondered if you would just describe it a little bit and maybe even share, you know, how we can start to seed our lives. Even as soon as someone finishes this podcast, what's one thing they could do to start that process of seeding?
You know, I think the seeds that we are surrounded with every moment of every day are our thoughts. Our thoughts are seeds, and our emotions, our energy in motion is like the water that feeds those seeds, really. So if you're sowing a garden, right? If you are planting seeds, it's like you're giving your energy to things that you want to create more of, things that you want to grow. And so I think in the simplest act that we can do on our own is to begin paying attention to our thoughts. Like, what's going on in there? You know, we were talking a moment ago about, I want to say, harmlessness. And I forget exactly how you put it, but you know, the thoughts that we have in our mind about other people, about other situations, about whether we're feeding negativity or playing into gossip. It's like we can become more aware of those thoughts. And these are thoughts that are going on in our head all the time that, you know, maybe we're not even in an exchange with somebody else about them, but these are thoughts that we suddenly become aware of that are not serving us. They're not contributing to the collective energetic soup of goodness. Beginning to be more aware of what we are seeding, because whatever energy we put into those thoughts and those ideas are going to grow. They're going to grow. And again, you know, our higher self's perspective has no judgment. So if you're down here seeding anger and judgment and resentment, your life force energy is saying, well, we better get busy with giving her more anger and resentment. And let's grow that for her, because that's where she's putting her life force energy. We don't recognize the power that we have as expressions of creation. And that's what we are. We are individualized expressions of creation, but we are very much part of a whole, part of a collective. And we're all playing a part in how we contribute to our entire world. And we do that in the simplest way with the ideas and the thoughts that we're holding in our own minds.
Beautiful, beautiful. No, this conversation truly just gives listeners a taste of what they'll find in your book. And how I would describe it is it's insightful, it's creative, it's in many spaces poetic, but it really does serve as a platform for people to do their opportunities for transformation, to borrow another term from your book. Is your book really does give a portal to doing this inner work. And I just really want to applaud you for great work. It's just a great book. And I'm sure you're affecting the energy and frequency and vibration of a lot of people because you wrote it. So good for you.
Well, thank you very much, Kristen. It has been so lovely to be with you. I've loved your questions, and I love that we're both book nuts, and it's been lovely to be with you. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much. To learn more about Donna Bond, her book, and her offerings, you can head to donnabond.com. I appreciate you being here this week. Until next time, keep connecting with your higher self.